In this video, we're going to do a deep dive on how this election in the United States is already influencing the rest of the world and how it will impact our nation long term, regardless of who the winner is. We're also going to look at the latest developments with the war in Ukraine as it's taking a turn in a new troubling direction. We're also going to take a glance at the recent Israeli strike on Iran and determine what that's going to mean moving forward. We'll also cover a bit more of what I discussed in a video I just released on Monday: election interference, who is responsible, and the long-term impact. Plus, we'll have another great giveaway for you, so let's jump in. If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Each week we try to break down the most significant events that are playing out in the world and grabbing the headlines and try to really look at the potential impact, even if we're far away from the conflict zone, to really help you determine the best decision about what and how you're going to prepare wherever you are. This week, while those far-flung conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine may have long-term geopolitical consequences based on who finally sits in the Oval Office, you have some immediate threats surfacing in a town or polling place near you that I'll tell you about here. So let's go ahead and jump in. Russia, Ukraine. Elections have consequences at home and abroad, and this election is no different. And the world is already reacting to the possible outcomes. Whichever candidate wins, there's going to be policy changes, and this has the world on edge. Now, this election is already impacting financial markets and geopolitical strategies. And without delving into the policies of either candidate, it's clear that if the VP wins the election next Tuesday, her policies will not mirror the current president's. Now, her stance on Russia may be more extreme, potentially allowing Zelensky to use Western weaponry for strikes further into Russian territory or not restraining European allies. Now, the former president's stance on the Ukraine-Russian conflict is also uncertain. He has claimed that he would end it in 24 hours, but it's unclear how. Will either leader support NATO allies or seek to restrain them? Will they continue supporting Ukraine with armaments or halt the supply? Whoever holds the highest office will bring policy shifts, and it's not likely to remain the status quo. This election is likely to be the most contested in the country's history, and I don't think that's hyperbole. And America will be distracted with its own business, risking a loss of focus in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And autocratic countries worldwide know this, and they're going to seize on the opportunity over the next 2 months. Now, both Ukraine and Russia are preparing to make dramatic moves before the election and likely implementing larger strategies once a picture emerges of who the next leader will be. Already, perhaps in preparations for having to go forward without U.S. support, President Zelensky met with 4 Nordic countries this week. And as I covered in previous videos, Russia is already readying thousands of North Korean troops for the front lines in Ukraine. Russia is making a major push before winter, and in conjunction with the leadership change in the United States, reporting the capture of 2 towns in eastern Ukraine as its forces advance at their fastest pace in over a year. Now, Russia is attempting to quickly integrate North Korean forces, but it's a struggle due to the rigid top-down approach, and the North Koreans are not yet fully adapted. And as they prepare for a winter offensive, integration issues, they persist, and close quarters are raising concerns about infectious diseases spreading between Russian and North Korean troops, which I'll address in just a moment. Now, Ukraine's defenses in the Donbass region have weakened, leading to Russian territorial gains, while the United States has stated that it will not limit Ukraine's use of Americans' weapons in response to North Korean involvement. Now, questions remain about how capable or willing North Korean forces are to endure Russia's high casualty approach to warfare. And although North Korea enforces generational punishments on deserters, would Kim Jong-un still retaliate against families if a soldier was presumed dead? Ukraine is seizing this potential hesitation with what could be called desert for desertion, offering beds, warmth, and hot meals to North Korean troops who surrender, encouraging them to not die senselessly in another country. Through its I Want to Live program, though I think my title is a little catchier, Ukraine has set up a hotline and QR code for surrenders despite North Korea's strict defection controls and harsh family punishment policies. Now, the response from the West, South Korea, and the United States has been that the introduction of North Korean soldiers on the battlefield is a bridge too far. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called it a dangerous expansion of the Ukraine conflict that threatens both European and Korean security. Now, Rutte described this move as evidence of Putin's growing desperation and criticized it as a breach of UN solutions. Ukraine and South Korea have agreed to enhance contacts and intelligence at all levels in response to North Korea's military involvement in the war. And South Korea warned it might consider supplying weapons to Ukraine if North Korea continues allegedly sending troops to Russia, viewing this as a serious security threat. And South Korean officials have condemned North Korea's actions and expressed concern that Russia may provide advanced weapons technology to North Korea in return, potentially escalating nuclear and missile threats against South Korea. Now, the U.S. stance is that it will not impose new restrictions on Ukraine's current use of America-supplied weapons in response to North Korea's involvement, viewing the Russia-North Korea alliance as a serious security threat. And NATO countries and allies, they might lift existing restrictions placed on weapons supply to Ukraine if there continues to be an escalation of North Korean troops in Ukraine. Now, clearly, many world leaders are ready to unleash a more aggressive response once North Korea enters the conflict with deployed and fighting forces. But will they get to that point? Wars, they are notorious spreaders of disease and illnesses due to harsh conditions and proximity to animals that can pass on zoonotic diseases. Now, reports indicate that a rodent-borne disease, likely a form of hantavirus, is spreading among Russian troops in Ukraine, causing severe symptoms like fever, vomiting, and bleeding from the eyes. Known as mouse fever, the illness primarily affects the kidneys and can be contracted through exposure to rodent droppings. And Ukrainian reports claim that Russian military leadership is ignoring troop complaints about the disease, seeing them as an attempt to avoid combat. And disease risks are heightened in war zones where poor conditions, lack of hygiene, and overcrowding make outbreaks among troops more likely. And if Russia is ignoring this and it's legitimate, it's significant to note that the mortality rate for untreated hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS, is quite high, with about 38% of the cases resulting in death. And it's also important to note that the hantavirus is more prevalent in Korea, especially the Hantan virus, which this may be. And that raises a possibility that the North Korean soldiers, not known for their health, may have introduced it to the Russian soldiers in Ukraine. That would be quite the turn of events for Putin. So what do you think? Will new leadership in the United States and the introduction of North Korean troops in this conflict lead to escalation, or will it bring about an end to this conflict? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Israel-Iran. When it comes to the slow-motion war between Israel and Iran, we also see it reacting to the policy shifts America is about to endure. What's preventing Israel from an all-out destruction of Iran's oil and economic infrastructure is the world's need for oil from the Middle East. The world still waits to see which side, Israel or Iran, will retaliate in a way that meaningfully or economically impacts the whole world. Israel has given some assurance that they will not attack oil targets. Israel recently carried out a strategic airstrike on October 26, targeting Iran's Russian-made S-300 missile defense systems, significantly escalating the conflict between the two countries. Now, the airstrikes destroyed 3 S-300 missile systems and multiple radar systems, greatly impairing Iran's ability to fire ballistic missiles at Israel. And it also left Iran susceptible to further attacks, eroding its ability to detect incoming air assaults. Now, the Biden administration was informed about the strikes in advance, which were intended to send a message and degrade Iran's missile capabilities. Now, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he has urged Iran not to respond, with the U.S. and Israel indicating that further actions could be taken if Iran escalates the conflict. Now, the attack also heavily damaged Iran's ability to build missiles, and this will impact not only what they can build to fire at Israel, but also what they can supply to Putin for use in Ukraine. Now, recent satellite images reveal that Israel's strike inflicted significant damage on a Revolutionary Guard base in Sharad, Iran, involved in ballistic missile development. And the attack has likely set back Iran's intercontinental ballistic missile program. Most importantly, it has left the Islamic Republic highly vulnerable to further attacks. And Iran has been warned not to retaliate further or risk an escalation, though it doesn't appear to be heeding that warning. The chief of staff to Iran's supreme leader told TV network Al Mayadeen on Thursday that Iranian retaliation was certain. And he said that the Iranian response would be strong and would make our enemy regret its attack. And Iran's counterstrike and further escalation will likely occur within days. So what do you think? Will the retaliation motivate Israel to attack oil infrastructure targets in Iran? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Giveaway. This week's winner will receive a 12-in-1 tactical pen tool. To participate in the giveaway, all you have to do is simply comment on the video, give it a thumbs up, and complete the giveaway form linked in the description section below. This information, it's only accessible to our team, and what we'll do is we'll use a random selection tool, and we'll choose a winner from the entrance and reach out to you via email you provide on the submitted form. So congrats to our last giveaway winner of the military wool blanket, Sam Hartley. We'll get that sent right away to you. U.S. elections. All right, after what feels like years, we're finally down to the last few days. We're only a few days away from Super Tuesday, but some of the interference events that we warned you about in our in-depth video on the elections that we released this past Monday, they're already happening. There was a youth brandishing a machete in Florida. Ballot drop-off boxes have been burnt in Washington and Oregon. There was an allegation of voter registration fraud amplified to a national level, and a GOP electorate was detained and cited for disorderly conduct in Pennsylvania for creating a disturbance at an early polling location. Now, as I said in my earlier election video, which I'll link to here at the end of this video in the comments and description section below, everyone's going to have their slant on these occurrences and hype them up to convince people problems are rampant, even if they are not. A teenager arrested for brandishing a machete as a form of voter intimidation, it's serious, but don't get me wrong. It's also more likely that a dumb kid doing dumb things than it is an orchestrated national effort at suppressing votes. Now, the GOP electorate arrested appears to be more of a he said, she said situation that is blown way out of proportion. The polling location had posted hours it was trying to adhere to, and the closing of the polls was in conjunction with those hours and not some larger scheme. The 2,500 voter registrants, depending on how you choose to view it, are either a case in point of fraud or, especially since those were registrations caught before any ballots were provided, is an example of the systems in place to prevent fraud working as they should. Now, in this case, the registrations were pulled because they had the same handwriting, signatures for voters that didn't match what was on file, or they contained inaccurate addresses or social security numbers. And the county believes that the submissions came from a single voter registration organization. Then there were the ballot box fires in Portland, Oregon, and across the river in Vancouver, Washington. Now, this one's slightly more intriguing because it wasn't just a case of gasoline or something similar being poured into a ballot box and lit on fire. On the contrary, the investigation indicates that the culprit had some knowledge of metallurgy and welding. After all, they created a device, attached it to a metal ballot box, and somehow penetrated the box with an incendiary charge. Rumors have swirled on the internet that the left was responsible, but that doesn't seem to make too much sense given that both Washington and Oregon are solidly blue, so it doesn't really make sense to burn their ballots. Then some just say that it's a false flag event. Now, I'm not saying the right is necessarily responsible for it either. I'm saying two things. First, until someone is caught, people are going to argue about the motive and the person behind it to fit their own narrative, let's be honest. Second, if there was an incident that had surfaced so far that might possibly be attributed to a foreign actor, it probably seems to me that the level of sophistication in these ballot box fires might speak to that. But I don't know. I'm not going to speculate or engage in rumors and accusations until we know more about it. I think that's the point. I mean, let's be honest. What we have here is just a handful of incidents that are really minor in the big scheme of things. But already people are building arguments that more significant problems are rampant. Now, obviously, I don't think that's the case, but this handful of incidents will continue to grow through Election Day and beyond. I would caution you to take reports loosely and not to heart until all the facts are collected, until the guilty are brought to justice, and until the ballots are counted. We're going to hear many more rumors and accusations. Some will be based on actual events and people, and some will be completely fabricated and amplified across social media. We have to acknowledge that some people will intentionally try to disrupt and obfuscate the process. And that may be what happened in Madison County, Indiana, where 3 sample ballots used to test voting machines were given, taken, or stolen, depending on whom you choose to believe. Look, as the dust swirls about us in this election season, let's not let it blind us before we give it a chance to settle. So what do you think? Should I be more concerned about these 4 incidents? Am I being too nonchalant about them? Let me know your opinions and comments below in the comments section. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to link to our more in-depth look at the election that we released on Monday in the description and comment section below if you'd like to take a bit of a deeper dive on this issue. But look, I think there's one thing that we can all agree on. We live in tumultuous times, and it's going to continue to escalate from now until mid-January when we have a new president sitting in the Oval Office. Whatever happens, there are ways you can prepare to insulate yourself and keep your life safer and more stable. We have hundreds of videos on that, and that's what I'm currently doing on my ongoing process of preparedness. Let me, as I always try to do, end with a word of encouragement in these videos. Again, the content that we're covering, gosh, I mean, I'm filming this on Halloween evening, about to go out with my family here in a few minutes after I film this. And, tomorrow we'll release this video. It'll be Friday when you see it. And, we have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, then boom, there we are at the final finish line. That it feels like, again, as I stated earlier, it feels like this has been going on for years. I know it has actually. I believe Trump, I want to say, announced his candidacy 2 years ago. So this has been kind of a, this has been on all of our radars, and it's taxing. It's heavy. I mean, let's just be honest. It's been frustrating, to say the least, to watch this play out. And I know, looking at so many polls, as we all saw back in 2016, I think right before the actual election day, I want to say Hillary, in most of the polls, was being positioned as 15 points up. She had, strong lead. And I say that because the polls, they turned out to be incredibly off. I forget exactly how they played out before the 2020 election, but I know this time around, it looks like, from most of the polling data I'm seeing from most of the independent sources, are putting it pretty much neck and neck in the main battleground states. And those states are going to be the ones that will ultimately decide the election. So here's my word of encouragement, as I always try to do when I wrap these videos up. Again, as I'm always going to say on this channel, stay calm. Just do what you can to prepare. I know for me, I've mentioned this many times on the channel, I have friends of every political stripe and view, and instead of getting caught up in the differences and the hate and the animosity and allowing that division that permeates so much of our media, instead of allowing that to influence my life, I've chosen instead to, as I often say on this channel, to fall back to the way I was raised, to be kind to people that you may have a difference of opinion with or views. And I'm of the position, I don't know if it's an issue of age or what, but the older I get, the more I realize, look, I mean, it is in my best interest to be as kind as I can to people. And we emphasize so much on this channel community. It's one of our core tenets that we try to encourage our audience, is to build community, whether it's in our online community that we've been building or with local friends and family, whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. My encouragement is to find ways to build bridges versus burning them. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know how it is in life. It's so much easier to tear down than to build up. And I'm at a point now in life where, again, people that I know I have big differences with, I'm trying to find ways to build a strong relationship, to encourage them, to love them. And that's really, at the end of the day, where I'm at. And I wish, I know this is a very kind of Pollyanna thinking of, hey, I wish that, we could all just get along and that everything will be okay. And I understand that the world is not there. And unfortunately, so many of us have been, I guess the word I'm looking for is indoctrinated by so much misinformation and so much information that's purposely designed to sow division. There have been channels that I've followed that I've had to stop following lately because I've seen them repeat obvious Russian propaganda that's designed to bring about division. And a lot of it's, again, I don't pretend that I'm above it all, that I can somehow see it, but there are things that are clear. As I'll always say, when someone is trying to stoke anger and fear in me, I know that's where I've got to be very careful anytime I listen to that. And that's why I try to be so careful on this channel, to encourage you, to give you the information of what's happening, but yet always point you back to what? If you watch my videos, we purposely as a team, when we build out our scripts of what we want to talk about in a video, we always try to give heavy weight at the end. After we define what problem you need to be aware of, we always try to balance it with practical, here's what you should be doing. Because I never want to leave y'all with the idea of, hey, the world is falling apart and it's just too bad. I mean, I don't understand the point of that message. And as I always will say, I'm going to try to give you the tools to encourage you to prepare. And that's where I want to end today, with this word of encouragement. I realize the elections are just a few days away. And as I stated on the video Monday that I just released this past Monday, I think that's where challenges are going to begin, to see all of the legal wrangling that's going to begin to play out. And we're going to see that. And we may see a side of America we've never really seen in our lifetime over those 62 days between the election day and the time that the president is actually put into office. And my encouragement for you is to stay calm, do what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing to prepare, and just don't give in to the hate and the division, because that will only eat you up. My encouragement is to find ways to build bridges, not tear them down. And that's all I'm trying to do in my life with the relationships that I have right now. But again, I'm excited for this next year. I'm excited for my country. I know we're going through hard times, but I firmly believe that once this is behind us, I hope that we can move on and begin to repair the damages that have been done, and that we can find ways to move forward as a nation. I'm not going to listen to the voices of dissent and, that are out there to tear down my neighbor, my friends, to give me a view that if someone disagrees that they are the enemy. I just don't listen to those voices anymore. I choose to build, to be kind. And again, I know this is not a prepper's message per se, but this is just who I am. And I'm exposing a little of my heart that I really want to teach that. I'm trying to teach that to my children. And whatever I can do to influence you, I would encourage you to do the same. Don't allow this to eat you up. Stay positive. Keep your head on a swivel, understanding that these are difficult times. There are people out there with malicious intent. I think they're the exception, not the rule. I'm not paranoid, thinking everybody's out to get me. That's not the mindset I move into every day. But I go with the idea that, hey, I will do all I can to build with people and to encourage them. And however I can do that for you on your preparedness journey, I'm here to do it. I know that's a lot to say, but a lot's been on my mind with everything going on, and we're all feeling it. So hopefully this time next week, I'm hoping we'll have a clear picture of what's at least coming next, but I don't know. Again, it looks like we could see a repeat of something like 2000, where the legal battle begins to be drawn out. Time will tell. All that to say, I would encourage you to keep preparing positively through these tumultuous times. Do what you can with what you have. Again, because we'll likely see some challenges flare up next week. And I'd like to believe that it's going to be pretty minimal. But what I'll do is I'll link to 2 videos down below that I would encourage you to watch after this one. The first is our more in-depth video at the elections and how to prepare for potential civil unrest. And the second is 5 ways that you can protect your home during chaos, which is some pretty good basic information that you may be glad to know depending on how things play out. Please take a look at these 2 videos. And as always, stay safe out there.